Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video from inside the Eve Echo's final test. Today we're going to be looking at getting started with drones, as a lot of things have changed with drones since the original OBT back in January. Now, if you have watched this channel for a while and you've seen the video on getting started with drones with like the Galente Algos or the Vexor or indeed the Ghostless Pirates Worm, then there's a couple of things that have changed. Don't just skip ahead of this video now, do sit and watch it because a lot has changed with drones. We've got a lot of ground to cover here with how things have gone on. Now, of course, before we jump in on this video, if you do enjoy it, let me know by hitting like on it. That does really help the channel out, and consider subscribing for all things Eve Echoes. Let me know what topics you'd like to see me cover in future videos by commenting down below, or by finding me on the social media channels shown along the bottom of your screen now. Of special note is the Cat Skull Cartel Discord. Of course, that is open to anyone who wants to talk about all things Eve Echoes. We've got some great public channels on there, very active community. Would love to have you guys come in and chat all things Eve Echoes and just have a great time. Anyway, that said and done, let's talk about drones. So we're going to start by looking here at the Galente Tristan frigate. This, back in the OBT, the first drone ship you could really get was either a Dragoon for a Mar or an Algos for Galente, which were both destroyer-level ships. This is a frigate, and a lot has changed since the beta in how drones now operate. If you've watched that video, of course, you'll have a basic understanding, but do stay tuned because there are quite a few things that, as I say, have changed. Now, first of all, if we look at the Tristan itself, why are we talking about this as a drone boat? Well, first of all, under its skills, you can see that it gets bonuses to drone DPS and drone effective HP based on your small drone operation level. And your frigate command bonus skill will give you an additional 5% small railgun tracking speed. Now, immediately that should be sending up red flags to a lot of the people who are using drones in the beta, because drones are a main weapon system, and you shouldn't ever split your weapon systems, right? Well, that's where you're wrong. Things have changed, and drones are now operating a little bit more like they are in EVE Online. They are no longer a primary weapon, but rather an additional secondary weapon. That's where the fittings come in. If you look now at a Tristan's fittings from right to left, it's got 2 low slots, 1 medium slot, 2 high slots, and then 2 drone slots. Now, drone tubes are kind of a unique thing. They have now moved to mid slots, which means you can have more primary weapons on your ship, and the drones become sort of a secondary harassing DPS, which actually I really like, and it does bring the game more into line with EVE Online for those who have played that. Looking at the rest of the ship's stats, 280 meters cubed for a cargo hold is standard for a frigate, as is the capacitor, max lock targets, flight velocity, all of those kind of things. But notably is the defense here, 398 for shield, 480 for armor, 489 for structure. This is an armor tank. It's not guaranteed to be an armor tank. You can shield tank this if that's what your stats massively prefer, but I personally would go on an armor tank on here. It's got a nice spread of different resistances there. You can see nice electromagnetic and thermal and kinetic. Just explosion is not very resistant, but the shield will keep you going quite a bit for against explosion. Now, anyway, having looked at those different fitting options there at the top, the 2-2-1-2, 2 drone tubes, 2 high slots, 1 mid slot, and 2 low slots, let's have a look at how that actually plays out on the ship. Now, be aware that, of course, I'm not very well skilled into drones. I've been skilling into other things during the beta, so the effective DPS here is fairly low. Also, I am only using civilian-level drones because it is kind of tricky to get hold of the higher-level ones. There are higher-level ones on the market, like Mark IIIs and all that, but they were very expensive and a long distance away. And since I'm only showcasing how this works, if you're already interested in drones, you'll go that extra mile and get the non-civilian ones, I'm sure. Now, if you look at the high slots here, I have gone for Mark III small rifled railguns. Now, the names of the turrets have changed. A small rifled railguns are the long-range ones, whereas the snub-nosed are the short-ranged ones. The snub-nosed are what used to be called blasters. Rifled railguns are now what used to be just called railguns. So I've got 2 of these fitted, and if we look at their stats, you can see they've got a fairly low activation cost. They are fairly fast at 4-second activation time, and a decent optimal range of 9 kilometers with an accuracy fall-off of 5. That means you are at you're at 50% effectiveness at the 14-kilometer mark, and you're going to be missing once you hit the 19-kilometer mark. It's 9 plus 5 is your first 50%, and then 9 plus 5 plus 5, the accuracy fall-off twice, for 19 for the effective 0. Tracking speed of 116 is fairly decent, single hit damage is nice and high, you get a good punch with these. But most importantly, the reason I've gone for the small rifled railguns rather than the snub-nosed is just that optimal range of 9 kilometers and the accuracy fall-off of 5. So anywhere between 9 and 14 is a good place to go. Now the reason I do that is because of the drones. If we have a look at the drones, the drone control range on this particular ship is currently at 20 kilometers. I do want to be getting as close to that 20 kilometers as possible. Obviously I don't want to be at 19 kilometers because my railgun's going to be missing. I want to be sitting ultimately somewhere in the 9 to 14 kilometer bracket. Now, drones, if you look at their stats here, you can see that they do different damage types. The Warriors, which are the Minmatar type drone, do explosive damage. If I look into the drone fittings here, which will load in just a second, the civilian acolytes, these are the Amar ones. They do electromagnetic damage. The hobgoblins, next up, do thermal damage. Those are the Galente ones. And the Hornets, which are Kaldari drones, of course, do kinetic damage. So you do want to have a spread of those. And if you tap into your drones, you'll get this bit here, this screen here, this window, where you've got your drones on the right-hand side that are available in your station or in your hold or whatever. And then you can put them into the drone base. So if I take all of these out for a moment and just imagine that we've come in with absolutely nothing here, and we've just come back from market sort of thing, this is what you'd be looking at. Now, I of course want the Warriors. The Warriors are actually what I'm going to be using for DPS at the moment, but I can put them into the drone bay down here, or I can put them up straight into a launch tube. Same with the civilian Hornets. Let's drop those into the drone bay, the Acolytes into the drone bay, and the Hobgoblins into the drone bay. Now, the advantage of drones is that they do those different weapon damage types, and you can change them on the fly out in space. It's not like if you're flying something like a Thrasher, and you decide that actually you don't want to be using projectile turrets, cannons, anymore. You actually want to be doing laser damage. You need to go to a station and fit through to laser turrets, that kind of thing. Don't know why you'd ever do that, but hey. You can, with drones, you can actually change on the fly. You can have all the different weapon damage types up front and personal. So here you can see that I've got the Warriors in the tubes ready to be used, and the others, the Hornets, the Acolytes, and the Hobgoblins are there in the drone bay as backup. Drones can be destroyed, so it's sometimes worth having more than the minimum. I should really have 3, if not 4, of each type of drone, so I can replace the 2 that I've lost without having to necessarily go back to station. Of course, you do still have an additional mid-slot on on something like a Tristan, on a frigate size. 1 mid-slot is actually surprisingly uncommon, so it's nice to even see 1. I don't have anything worth putting in here. A Webifier could be useful just because you're still fairly short range at only 20Ks, but in all honesty, for what I'm going to be doing with this, I would rather just leave the mid-slot empty. Now, for the low slots here, as I said, this is primarily an armor tank ship, so I have gone for the Mark 1 small armor repairer, but I could equally put in a Mark 5 shield booster. I've got one of those available, and keep its shield boosted up nicely, but I would personally more towards armor repairers. If you're going drones, you're probably going Galente, and from what I recall, the Tristan, the Algos, and the Vexor do all work best as armor tanks. I've then also fitted on a Mark 1 small afterburner, but of course that's just for me to get some range and try and keep at that 15 kilometers. If anything gets a bit too close, I can pull back. But as a frigate, in fairness, I'm fairly nippy anyway, so I can pull back to that distance. If you wanted, I suppose you could put a shield booster on there to go with the armor repairer. I really don't recommend mixing your tanks like that, just because you're half as effective at either of them. What you can do, I don't have any on me currently, is something like a drone control module. Now, if I go into the market, we can have a look at some of the low slots for how you can upgrade for the low slots enhancements for weapons for drones. So if we scroll down to weapon upgrades, close down heat sinks, we don't need those, or magnetic field stabilizers, or gyro stabilizers, or macro particle stabilizers, or ballistic control systems. Here we are. They have drone damage amplifiers. Now, drone damage amplifiers, something like a Mark 1 drone damage amplifier, straight up by having that fitted to your ship, you get 5% bonus to your drone damage. When you activate this thing, it activates for 20 seconds with a 60-second cooldown. You get an additional 5.52% for that there, which just is an extra bit of damage. Also, in activation time adjustment, when activated, the drones fire much faster, 400% faster, which is quite a big jump. Tracking computers, I just want to double check. These, I believe, are missiles. No, it's for turrets. So yeah, it is just the drone drone controls, and the drone navigation computers. Now, drone navigation computers, if you look at these, what these do again is when you activate them, and they activate for 10 seconds, 60-second cooldown, what this is going to do, as it says here, is increase the flying speed of drones, which means they're harder to hit and they're going to close with the target quickly. If you are using drones fairly frequently, I would consider possibly going with something like a drone damage amplifier. Those are nice and useful. We don't need to worry about rigs for this particular one, as ultimately, obviously, the Tristan itself doesn't have any. But now if we go back to looking at the drones, you will see that these themselves do have their own little stats which change between them. Not just to the damage types, but things like the optimal range and the flight velocity and the orbital speed. That's how fast a drone can actually get to the target that you want to be shooting at and how quickly it can be dealing its damage. And if we go across and have a look, the Minmatar ones I think are the fastest. If I recall, the Amar ones are the slowest. Have a look. Flight velocity is 4,620, orbital speed of 996. I think actually those are a little bit faster. But yeah, there we are. Civilian Hobgoblin 3360 meters per second, orbital speed of 660. The Hobgoblins are a little bit slower, but they do hit that little bit harder with thermal damage. So you kind of have a mix. Play around with the drones and get a feel for them. Now, of course, this is just getting started with the Tristan. You are going to need drone skills, and not just drone skills, of course. Excuse me, dry throat. Obviously, small drone operation is going to be your first port of call. If we have a look at what this does, at a full level of 5, you get an additional 20% damage to all of your small drones, and their tracking speed is at an additional 10%. That's a well worth having, as is the small drone upgrade, which increases the damage further, and the small drone accuracy fall off and optimal range also getting increased as well. That is just straight up damage increases for your drones. Now, of course, you don't just have drones on the ship, you do also have small railguns, therefore small railgun operation is going to be worth having. At level 5, you can see that's going to be 20% extra damage and 10% railgun tracking speed. And of course, if we scroll down this one, you've got the small railgun upgrade as well, which at level 5 is 15% small railgun damage, extra accuracy fall off, and extra optimal range. That's really useful because it means at that extra range I can pull back a little bit further. I'll have a better optimal range with the turrets, so I can pull back and keep those drones doing what they do best. So you do kind of need to split your skills a bit more. Obviously, if you're running something like a Thrasher that is just using cannons, then all you need to do is the cannon skills. Whereas something like a Galente Algos or a Tristan, you are going to need both the drone skills and your railgun skills. Now, we're talking, of course, about just the drones there. If you're using a Tristan, then Frigate Command, and indeed, of course, under Maintenance Technology, Frigate Defense are going to be important skills for you to have as well, just because they benefit frigates, as are under Electronics. Frigate Engineering is going to be a useful skill for you as well, just to increase the size of your capacitor and power grid so you can do a little bit better in combat. Now, of course, as I said, the Tristan is a great place to start with drones, but where would you go from there? Well, there's a little sneaky peek of where we're going eventually. Of course, the Tristan at tier 3, this is your first port of call as a drone ship. After using a Tristan for a while, obviously you're going to have some good small drone skills. You're going to want to look at coming up into destroyers, and I think we are around here. There we are, the Algos. The Algos as a ship, you can see here 20% drone DPS and 5% drone EHP for each level of small drone operation. You should already have small drone operation at level 5 by the time you get your first Algos. Same with Destroyer Command, you can get additional Warp Disruptor and Energy Neutralizer. So guess what you're going to fit in those extra mid slots on this thing? Because this does have 2 mid slots in addition to your 3 drone tubes. So the Algos is going to be kicking out extra drones with 2 high slot turrets, 2 additional mid slots there, which I would go for the Warp Disruptor to lock your opponent down, and an Energy Neutralizer to drain their capacitor and just shut them down there. 3 low slots. Looking at the ship itself, you can see again this is an armor ship, so you're going to be wanting one of those low slots to be something like an armor repairer, probably then a perhaps an afterburner to keep at range, and again something like a drone damage amplifier. You do also have the rigs, which we will come to at a later date, and that's well worth going into. In fact, if you are doing your tutorials, I think it's once you've done Advanced Tutorial 4, you do get the option of an Alga Trainer. Now, this only gives you 1 mid slot and only, just the 1 mid slot, and the stats are slightly lower than the standard Algos, but it is still a great little destroyer to get into if you're using drones. Same then again, you can go up to a Vexor, you do actually get a Vexor Trainer, nice and cheaply on the market. Currently, those are seeded. The Vexor does have better fittings, and again, better skill bonuses, but of course that is now going up to medium drones. Now, much later on, of course, we are also going to be looking at things like the Gurustus Pirate Worm. This is one beast of a frigate. If you've watched any of my videos using this thing, you'll see the sheer damage it can do. Now it's got 2 high slots in addition to 3 mid slots and 2 drone tubes. That's insane. It also gets additional small drone damage based on advanced small drone operation. It basically counts as like it's almost doubling the power of the drones. It's actually more than doubling the power of the drones once you've got that at level 5. At level 5, that's 5 times 6, that's 30, 300%. 300% extra drone damage. It's insane. It's insane. Then having a look at things like the Advanced Frigate Command bonus, you get additional missile and torpedo kinetic damage and thermal damage, which of course just means that you've got the turrets on there that are going to be shooting as well as the drones themselves. And ultimately the Worm is one of those ultimate toys that you're going to be looking for if, like me, you're a frigate pilot and you enjoy using drones. Now anyway, I've harped on about this long enough. Let's take this out into space and actually have a look at it in action. Although, of course, as I said, do understand my DPS is a little low, but we're going to have a look at how this actually operates. So I've come out to Sekulda, which is a 0.3 sector, and it's currently got an Angel Large Anomaly at level 2, which I reckon we should just be able to take out. As I said, my skills and my DPS aren't great at the moment, and I couldn't find a level 1 other than the Angel Cartel base, which of course I want to leave open. So we're going to come out here, and we're going to give this a try. You can see I've come in with 2 Gisty Rifters, so 2 Gisty Slashers and a Rifter. So I'm going to approach that Rifter and keep it a range of, optimal was 9, so we're going to go at 10. Pull the 2 drones out of their tubes. We're going to start firing the railguns. Those drones you see will shoot off to their target, and they will start whizzing around. They're those little green crosses. And you'll see that does a decent amount of damage. I can keep some range from this Rifter. 14 kilometers is probably the best place to keep at right now. You see, I'm not taking too much damage. Obviously, this is just my shield. Armor is where we do the real worry. My drones should re-auto target to that Gisty Slasher, along with my turret. It's at 12 kilometers, 10 kilometers. Again, it's going to punch it through nice and quickly. We don't worry too much about the fact that we're losing some shields. We are an armor boat. I have to keep telling myself that because obviously I run Minmatar ships for the most part, which are shields. So when I see a shield hit 59%, I'm starting to get a little bit worried and itchy to activate a shield booster, which obviously I can't do here. Now, as you see, all I'm really doing here is letting my drones do the work. I'm sitting at 8 to 10 kilometers. That's ultimately where I want to be, and my drones will then punch into absolutely anything and everything. So we're going to keep it, again, 10 kilometers, send the drones in, target this first Rifter. Now, if I want to, I can actually send the drones at a different target. You'll see here, as long as they're within 20 kilometers, I can keep the drones working on something else. They're quite happy to go over there and do their thing while I shoot the 11-kilometer Rifter with my turret, because the turret's got a bit, well, okay, it's there. The turret's shooting is what I'm trying to say here. I need to get a little bit closer just because I am coming out of that accuracy range. Let's go to 9. And we're still doing well on the shields. We're not really taking much damage because we're nice and far away, and that's one of the other advantages of drones. You can kind of sit back and just let your drones do the work. Let's let the turret again target on to this Rifter. I am going to pull away to 10 kilometers again. I'm going to activate the afterburner for that. And again, oh, the siren in my ear that my shields are running low. It's, it's a shield tanker. It's, it's slightly triggering to know that we're about to come down into armor, but it's okay. My drones are quite comfortably taking down that Rifter nice and slowly. Obviously, as I said, I'm only using civilian drones, so their damage is ultimately really quite piddly, and most of the work in this case is going to be done by my autocannons. Not my autocannons, sorry, my railguns. So the railguns will do most of the work, with the drones sort of just putting a bit of an extra punch in place as well. Shields, no, we're not running out of shields just yet. We're still good, Obviously, once you start getting like Mark III warriors or Mark III, whatever it is you fancy, then 100% that can be a way to go. And in fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call these drones back. I am going to open my fitting, and I'm going to see if we can swap now out to... They're in space. I want to call those back. I've got to remember how on earth you call your drones back. There is a way. I will do it after this fight, because I don't want to end up getting blown apart in video like this. That would not be good. Anyway, move in towards the Rifter there. We're taking a little bit of damage onto the armor now, which is fine. Come towards that rifter. My railguns should start working. We're going to put the armor repairer on because we've got plenty of cap. And just start taking those out. Drones will start moving in, taking out that rifter. In come the railguns as well. Bit of extra punch. And away we go. It's worth noting as well, actually, while I'm using an armor repairer, one of the big differences with armor repairers to shield boosters is when they actually do their job. Now, shield booster, if you activate it, it immediately boosts your shield. It then cools down, it does its cycle, and at the end of the cycle, it punches up again, and you get you get your shield at the start of each cycle. With an armor repairer, that is done at the end of the cycle. So the cycle goes round, you see now, and it's once the cycle hits completion that I get the buff, that boost to armor. That means there is a slight delay with armor repairers. You do kind of need to put them on slightly ahead of when you expect to use them. It's another reason I'm not overly fond of them. I need to come a little bit further away as my turrets aren't tracking properly. I'm a little bit too close. I'm talking too much and not concentrating on killing stuff. There we are, turn off the bits and pieces now. I'm okay for armor, and I'm okay for afterburner. I'm at a nice range there. Actually, we could come a little bit further. Let's keep at range, 9 kilometers. Keep that afterburner on, just because that's a slasher, which are very fast-moving ships. And clearly my turrets are struggling. The drones are okay, the turrets are struggling, just because I'm up close and personal. There we are, we should hopefully start hitting a bit more now. There we go, that's a nice punch. You can see the drone's doing like 4 or 5 damage and the turret's doing like 107. As I said, this is not a great advert for drones, but that's because I am using civilian drones. We do want you to be using Mark III or higher. I did actually find some nice blueprints out in Nullsec for Mark Vs, so I am hoping that some guys in the Catskill Cartel are going to make me some Mark V drones for about the point where I start using an Algos or some of the other drone ships, just to showcase that in a future video. But there goes the slasher. That should be the end of this little anomaly. There might be another wave, I can't honestly remember. Nope, we are good, so now I can start looting. That was all nice and simple. I can put the armor repairer on, start looting all these bits up and down the field now. And you see, ultimately, I take very little damage to the armor there. Obviously, turn the armor repair off now, I'm at 100% damage. Ultimately, drones allow you to keep at range, as if you were doing, like, missile kiting. You can just keep that distance and damage people from afar. And a Tristan is a nice, speedy little ship that can do that. If you can get some nice, powerful drones and some really good long-range railguns, then actually you can do a surprising amount of damage with these guys from a great level of safety. And that is something that I'm going to be training into. You can see that as I'm doing my skills now. I am training into small railgun operation and small drone operation. I will be moving further to have that at a future date. Once I get these properly up and running, I'll do a video showcasing just how dangerous a drone ship can be, especially at PvE. PvP, you do kind of need to be in a fleet, just because obviously you're kiting, you're keeping range, you want other people to be there to lock them down. You're the big guns that sit at the back, other people lock them down. Anyway, I hope you can't hear the dogs barking in the background. That is going to be a problem with me here in Bulawayo at the moment. We've got some very excitable dogs that do like to just bark at anything. Before we go, let's see if we can find a way to recall these back. I don't honestly remember how you do this. I know it's in my previous video, but I can't watch that right now. There is a way. There is a way that you can draw the drones back to you when you're in space, and once you've drawn them back... Nope, nothing to do there. Can't double tap, can't long press. Ah, there we are, that's the one. Return all. You hold it and you drag it and you go to return all. And those drones will now come back into my ship. Those should be in. If I go to fitting now, I should be able to... Yep, there we go. I can take those acolytes and I can pop those into the drone tubes out in space. And you can actually do that as a hobgoblin in there as well. You can actually do that in combat as well. As long as you're far enough away and it's nice and safe to do so, you pull your drones back and you can sort that out for you. Anyway folks, that about covers everything I wanted to say with getting started with drones using the Galente Tristan. Obviously this is a Galente ship, but I picked this one up from out here in Malden Heath, and this was on the markets here. It's a readily available ship like the Kestrel. It is a seeded ship, so it's dead easy to get hold of. If you're into drones, grab a Tristan, get started on that, have a go with it, see how you feel about them, and in a future video we'll have a look at how to upgrade beyond here. Anyway folks, thank you ever so much for watching. Hit a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below, what topics you want me to cover in future. Otherwise, happy sailing and see you in New Eden.